This report brought to you by the Richmond Club, where investors and high-growth companies meet.
Thanks, Claude. Our next speaker is the CEO for PyroGenesis Canada. Please welcome Mr. Peter Pascali.
Thank you very much. I'm Peter Pascali, CEO of PyroGenesis Canada Inc., a company that's listed on the TSXV under the symbol PYR and on the OTCQB under PYRNF. When you have some time, you may want to take a look at our forward-looking statement. Just a little overview of PyroGenesis. What we do is we design, develop, manufacture, and commercialize something called advanced plasma processes, which I'll get into in a moment. Just some highlight. As of September 28th, our stock was trading around 44 cents. I closed yesterday at 52. It's at 54 just before I got up here. Values the company around $60 million. 56% of the company is held by insiders. I think 55% is mine. Company has about 67 patents. We have 70 employees. We've been around for 25 years, and we have some very interesting certifications. I've got a lot of skin in the game. I invest in pretty much every transaction. There's a couple of transactions I did not involve in, tax-driven transactions. I just invested $2 million a couple of weeks ago of my own money when the stock was in the 40s. I invested it at 50% premium to market. We didn't market the deal. I didn't expect anyone to follow us, but we had some people who, I guess, shareholders that heard about it, about $250,000 worth, another $700,000 of debt that wanted to convert. I was quite surprised. I'd like to introduce you to our board before I introduce you to our company. My background, I'm the only employee on the board. Everybody else is outside director. My background's investment banking. I used to be an investment banker on Wall Street in the 80s doing mergers and acquisitions for the Fortune 500. I took this company, I came upon it, it was a handful of employees to what it is today, 70 employees. Alan Curley is the chairman of the board. You may know him as the former chairman of the Canadian Commercial Corporation. He teaches corporate governance at the School of Directors in Ottawa. Bob Radin, you probably don't know. He's a retired U.S. two-star Army general. Amongst his many other duties, his responsibilities were negotiating multi-billion-dollar contracts, and he helps us with our military vertical. We have a long-standing relationship with the U.S. military. And Chris Twigg-Malesi, a member of the Hatch group of companies, has over 40 years of experience in mining and metallurgy, which is another one of our verticals. And as I said, he helps us in that area. And Andrew Abdullah, a partner at M&P, has known us for over 20 years and sits as the chair of our audit committee. But what is plasma? We're not talking about blood plasma here. We're talking about the fourth state of matter. And I don't want to sound too Star Trek-ish, but you might recall your science teacher describing to you three states of matter: the solids, the liquids, and the gases. And if you recall the example of the solid, it was an ice cube. You heat it up, it becomes the next state, water, a liquid. You heat it up, it becomes a gas. Well, if you heat a gas up even further, it becomes a plasma. A plasma is very hot. The sun is a plasma ball, lightning is a plasma. We didn't invent it. But what we did do is we harnessed its various properties, and what we like about it, it transforms things. We take, in the picture on the far right, this is a plasma torch. These are two plasma torches, and we take these plasma torches that we've developed, and we put them into different processes. And that's about as technical as I'm going to get for this lunch. And what we like about it is transformative, as I said. It can transform waste to energy, and we can transform wire to powders for 3D printing. And that's basically the three verticals that we're in. Military, environmental. Our claim to fame is we are on the U.S. aircraft carrier. Our system to destroy waste on a plasma-based process is on the U.S. aircraft carrier. I don't know of any other foreign technology that's on that aircraft carrier. We're in the spec. The spec doesn't change for numbers of years. We've already delivered 2 systems, and we expect to deliver another 2 systems shortly. That relationship has value not only inside the military, but outside the military as well. Within the military, we are also involved with UK-US Special Operations Group to destroy chemical warfare weapons. The second vertical is mining and metallurgy, and we do quite a few things within that group. Two notably are just recovering aluminum from a waste stream called dross, using our dross-right process. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. And additive manufacturing, which is 3D printing, as you may know. We developed a process being used by GE to convert wire into small spherical powders. So these are our three verticals. As an ex-banker, what I like about it is it's like they're independent, very independent. So it's like a fund, and it's called multi-legged stool. And we stick to our knitting. You may think we're all over the place, but we stick to our knitting. If we were selling tires, we'd sell them to cars, buses, bikes. We would not get involved in upholstery. We would not get involved in braking systems. We would do tires. So we do plasma. We're plasma experts. We have one of the largest concentrations of plasma expertise under one roof anywhere in the world. And that's our clear advantage. With respect to the US military, we were approached many years ago, over 20 years ago, by the US military to see if we could use plasma as a way to destroy waste on board an aircraft carrier, because Congress had mandated that they not throw it overboard. What was being presented to them at the time was this monstrosity that went through 3 decks and weighed over 100 tons. This is probably one of the highest tech platforms in the world. Every inch is called for, every pound is called for. So they called us they said, listen, using plasma, can you do it? To make a long story short, we did. After about $50 million of investment on their part, and we didn't do this for free. It wasn't R&D. It was R&D, but it was commercial. We made a healthy profit doing it, and we ended up being in the design. We're in the design of the new aircraft carrier. So this timeline in green at the bottom here is just a recent timeline to give you some idea of what's happening in this particular vertical. The idea was to have an order for 1 aircraft carrier this year, which changed partly because of Trump's platform to buy more for less, and he wanted to double up. So he wanted to buy 2 aircraft carriers. And the change delayed things as he had to get approval from Congress. And I'm happy to say that Congress recently approved the request. It's supposed to go to the Secretary of Defense and himself for approval. I believe it's already done. We originally expected to have an order for 2 systems, which is about $10 to $13 million, sometime in Q2 2019, but we expect that before the end of the year now. That $10 to $13 million, just to put it in perspective, we made about $7 million last year in revenue, so real revenues, and we're on target to do about the same this year. So that's a very significant number in relation to the historic numbers, and it will be built between 12 and 15 months once we get the order. The second vertical, and one that's really, it's really taking us by surprise on how fast it's gotten hold of, is our dross-right process, which recovers valuable metal from the waste stream that comes off like an aluminum smelter. The clear advantage that we have is we don't use salt. Typically, the smelters send their dross off-site to recapture that valuable metal that's in it. And the reason it goes off-site is those systems use salt, and if salt comes in contact with aluminum, it contaminates the batch. So what I'd like to do is take a second and show you this video.
PyroGenesis dross-right system maximizes aluminum recovery, salt-free. Hot or cold dross is introduced into an argon-filled tilting rotary furnace, preventing undesired oxidation or thermiting reactions. The furnace is rotated in order to separate the metal phase from the oxide and/or non-metallic phase. Dross-right recovers 20% more aluminum than leading competing dross separating technologies. The recovered metal is removed and returned directly back into the holding furnace, while a controlled amount of oxygen is introduced into the dross-right furnace. The exothermic reaction between the oxygen and the non-recoverable metal heats up the remaining residue, allowing the furnace to be used without an external burner, eliminating the production of greenhouse gases while simultaneously reducing the overall waste residue production. Drossrite has more than 20% decrease in residue generation. The exothermic reaction increases the furnace temperature to the operating temperature, thus preparing the furnace for the next charge. The entire Drossrite process is highly automated and controlled and monitored from the highly intuitive HMI. The Drossrite advantages include salt-free, non-hazardous waste residues, substantially increased aluminum recovery, on-site operation, no degradation of recovered metal, minimal residue, cost-effective, highly automated, minimal footprint and storage space, minimal manpower, treats black and white dross and hot and cold dross. Mainly used by aluminum smelters, parts manufacturers, and recyclers, PyroGenesis' revolutionary new technology Drossrite is the world's first highly efficient, salt-free dross solution, allowing smelters to treat dross on site, saving our environment while saving your bottom line.
So let's put the Drossrite in terms of commercial perspective. We're selling these systems for about $1 million, $1.5 million each. To the smelter, it's less than a year payback. The first order was for $600,000 to a client in Mexico. It was installed in April of 2016, and in the summer of 2017 was finally accepted. We didn't expect another reorder from that client for at least a year. We got it in November, a couple months later, at $1.1 million, almost twice the price, pretty much the same system. Currently, we have a demonstration system, and how we market it is people have to pay for the demonstration. We just don't do it as a marketing. We're just not smart enough to separate the real guys from the guys who just want to have a look-see, so we make them pay. It's in India currently, totally booked in India. We can't keep up with the demand. We have to make a second demonstration unit for the North American market. But what's really interesting is that we've been asked by smelters to toll it ourselves. They say, listen, our business is smeltering. That's our bit. We don't want to get into that. If you want to do it for us on our site, please do. And that's very interesting, because whereas we could sell a system for $1 million and $1.5 million, tolling, we could make $1 million a year, year in, year out, tolling it on those sites. How big is the marketplace? It's hard to define. There's over 3 million tons per year of aluminum dross being processed. Our systems do 5,000 tons per year. So you just divide it, it's about 600 systems. But we're not going to manage every dross. Some is too small, various reasons. But what we haven't added in here is the zinc and copper dross that we could probably process as well. In fact, we have announced that we're actually in India, we're going to start processing with our demonstration system zinc. So when you look at this, it's close to $1 billion industry. But we're not set up to do tolling. To do tolling, you have to know India, South America, the Middle East. You have to know their labor practices, the permitting practices. We can do it. We're doing it slowly. But ideally, it would be to joint venture with someone locally. Or even better, one person globally. And I think that's what you have to look at PyroGenesis over the next little while. See how we develop that. Because that will be the springboard into a very significant market, and depending on who we choose as a player to partner with, will determine how fast we can get into that tolling business. But that's where the big business is right now. Looking at just selling systems, we have a pipeline of around 9 systems. And when we say pipeline, those are people who have paid for the demonstrations and are very interested in coming to a contract to buy a system. And that's about $9 to $12 million in our pipeline. Additive manufacturing. That's our third segment. And what we do is we make the ink that goes into metal 3D printers so they can print metal parts. We invented this process called plasmatomization many years ago, before 3D printing. We were involved with NATO to make lightweight armor, and we couldn't find small spherical powders, or if we did, titanium powders, or if we did, they're very expensive. So we went ahead and built our system ourselves and made it, and this is angled on purpose so you don't see what's happening at the top, but effectively what's happening at the top of this, this structure, this rocket ship, is we have 3 plasma torches that impinge on a wire, a titanium wire. So imagine there's a titanium wire coming from the top of the page to the bottom. When it hits the torches convert it to small spherical powders which are collected at the bottom. Small, pure spherical powders, they flow like water. As I said, we did this for a NATO project, and once the NATO project was finished, we had found that Stryker, a biomedical company that makes biomedical implants like titanium knee replacements and hip replacements, liked how our powder flowed, and was buying our powder, but they wouldn't buy everything. We wouldn't buy anything. So we stick to our knitting, we got out of the business. But lo and behold, around 2016, well, this is a 2016 report, when 3D printing went from plastics to titanium, they went to metal, they went to titanium, they needed exactly the powders that we made. The experts in the industry come out with a report, rollers come out with a report every year, the 2016, they project that by 2020 there'll be over 14,000 printers, metal printers, requiring over 8.6 kilograms of metal powder. A third of that's titanium. That's exactly what we did. That's our backyard. We've done it before. So we decided to get back into the business. And the reason why we decided to get back into the business at the time was one of our powders could generate over $10 million in revenues. Selling powders at the time about $400 to $600 a kilogram. And that was significant. It only cost us about $800,000 to make a tower. So we decided to get back in the business. And this is where it gets interesting. If you concentrate on the right side of the slide, we had, when we got out of the business, a company by AP&C, a company called AP&C, took it over and was having a hard time of it until 3D printing went from plastics to titanium. And one of their clients was a company called Arcam. Arcam makes printers. And what happened under Arcam was very interesting. Under Arcam, AP&C became the dominant supplier of titanium powder in the industry. We're the only other company in the world that can do it using plasmatomization. As I told you, we invented it, we coined the name. So our business strategy was effectively to get back in the market and become a second supplier. If we had 10, 15 systems up and running, we would not address 6% of the marketplace projected by the Wohlers report. So we didn't have to corner the marketplace, we just had to be a credible second supplier. And then what happens? As we're doing this, GE comes along and buys Arcam. Not only did they buy Arcam, they also bought a company called Concept Laser, total close to $1.2 billion. What's interesting about this is, if you follow the green, our technology makes powder in the size of 15 to 106 microns. Arcam uses 45 to 106. Concept Laser uses 15 to 45. I would suggest to you that one of the strategic reasons they bought Arcam was for the powder. If you don't believe me, Concept Laser wasn't the first person they went after. They went after SLM? No, it was, I can't remember. Oh, geez, that's embarrassing. But the person that refused the offer, the other company, is exactly the same size cut, 50 to 45. Refused it. GE, 3 weeks later, bought Concept Laser. What this effectively has done was, in my opinion, disrupted the supply chain by coming under the GE umbrella. You can imagine how many players in the industry who are buying from AP&C no longer want to, even if they can. There's a unique relationship you have with your powder supplier and yourself. If you're buying powder, the type of powder, the uniqueness, how you're going to use it, for what, and the quantities. And if you buy from AP&C, you're susceptible to price changes that you're not in control of. So our first patents that we came out with were game-changing. And one of the drawbacks was that the distribution of the powder was such that you had quite a bit of waste, and if you're producing for one particular printer, you had to match it up your other powders to other printers. And that might be okay for AP&C and GE, but it wasn't for us. So in the summer a couple of years ago, we decided to improve it, and what we effectively have done was come out with new IP, which narrows the particle size distribution for little or no waste. And that's about as technical as I'll get tonight. Just to underscore that what's happening in the additive manufacturing industry, we started in March 2017. We put up a system, assembled and commissioned it, and the ramp up was several months later, in October. We never expected anybody to have any interest for our powder. Well, I mean, why would you? We're not ramped up yet, it's not complete. But enough players in the industry were interested that we signed several NDAs with end users and sent out sample powders. This is translated into several strategic discussions for joint ventures, which I press released, so this is nothing out of school, that we're in discussions with people, significant players to help us accelerate our growth in the industry. We already have a 10-ton powder order that we received at the beginning of the summer. We have been recommended, we haven't mentioned the names yet, but we've been recommended by a major 3D printer to their clients to buy powder from us. We just finished off a new facility, completing a new facility. So we are positioning ourselves as a significant player in the industry. Now, this industry, these players that are in this industry are just three. Ourselves, AP&C, and another company called Tekna. The only two that use plasma atomization are ourselves and AP&C. Why do I mention this? If you're buying powder, and if you've qualified powder from, let's say, AP&C, and it's been plasma atomized, it's easier to qualify somebody who's doing it the same way. But even if there was twice as many, 10 times as many companies in the industry, there are not enough powder suppliers to supply the demand. And you're finding outrageous acquisitions taking place in the industry. If you take a little closer, you'll see outrageous prices being paid for powder manufacturers. So, what do you have to look forward to over the next little while, or what should you be looking to for the three business segments? The military and environmental from the U.S. military, there's a pending order for 2 systems coming down the pipe, around $10 to $13 million, very significant, because it serves as a baseline upon which we can safely build our DROS-RITE and additive manufacturing business over the next 12 months. Mining and metallurgy, I spoke to you about DROS-RITE. There's a number of other businesses we're doing, but DROS-RITE alone is taking off. We cannot really keep up right now with the demand for our product, and we're going into tolling. Keep an eye out if we do partner up with someone, who it is, how big they are, and what that'll do for the tolling business. And last but not least, additive manufacturing. We're moving along conservatively, laying the groundwork, building the powders, sending them out to players. Pretty much anybody you know in 3D printing, be it an OEM, a powder distributor, or an end user, we are probably in discussions with, and they're probably sampling our powders. Where does this leave the investor? 2017, revenues of around $7.2 million. We break even at around $8.5 million. We break it around here. 6 months. This reflects essentially revenues from the military, DROS-RITE, a little bit of additive manufacturing, not much. And it reflects us getting into the businesses of DROS-RITE and additive manufacturing. That's basically what we've been doing over the past 18 months. Our backlog is signed contracts that we're working on, 4.1 million, over 50% of last year's revenues. And our pipeline Again, if I was to put the pipeline of everybody we're talking to, it would be a ridiculous number. But the pipeline that we put up here are ones that we are very secure that are coming down the road. That, you know, like the U.S. Navy, US Navy, $10 to $13 million. Dross right, $9 million. And that's it for Dross right. 9 systems, that's it. We've already done 4. So that would be between $19 and $23 million over the next 12 to 15 months. In relation to where we have been, it's huge. The share right now is trading around 52 cents. Our average volume, well, we get hit over the summer. We're a venture exchange. We get hit over the summer. So we're around 100,000. If you add in all the exchanges and what's happening in the States now, it's picking up a bit, probably over 100,000. And I'm not here to tell you to go buy the shares. Absolutely not. That's not what I want you to do, surprisingly enough. I'd really like here to pique your interest and have you make a deeper dive. Look at what we're doing, get comfortable, and if it meets your risk profile, pull the trigger. But there's a lot happening in PyroGenesis. It's very interesting, and I thank you for your time today.
This report brought to you by the Richmond Club, where investors and high-growth companies meet.